on the news. More Russian troops flooding into Ukraine, stepping up their attacks on populated areas. Russia says it's only targeting military installations, but the number of civilians killed, including children, is rising. President Biden will talk about the war in his State of the Union tonight, plus inflation and consumer prices. We'll have a preview. Tomorrow is Ash Wednesday, and priests in the Diocese of Brooklyn will be able to place ashes on the foreheads of the faithful once again. Plus, a religious art form that is so unique and steeped in the Bible. We'll meet the artist who traveled across the world to adorn a church in Park Slope. Currents News starts right now. Russia is escalating the conflict in Ukraine. Attacks on populated urban areas are increasing. Bombings in the city of Kyiv destroyed a government building. Now people in Kyiv are prepared to defend themselves after the main TV tower was blown up with deadly results. Emily Schmidt reports.
This is just one moment. But it shows how Ukrainians, some wrapped in flags, all driven to defend, responded when they saw a Russian vehicle approach.
We are fighting for our rights, for our freedoms, for life, for our life. And now we're fighting for survival.
The UN estimates at least 102 civilians have died so far. That figure likely underestimates the true toll. Ukraine's president accuses Russia of war crimes, which the Kremlin rejects, for bombing the city of Kyiv. This video shows a government building destroyed after a military strike. A voice on the video says there are many injured I can't see. The Russian military warns of more attacks. Satellite images from late Monday show a 40-mile-long Russian convoy approaching Ukraine's capital. The U.S. Secretary of State floated the idea Tuesday of kicking Russia off the UN Human Rights Council.
These are the human rights abuses this council was created to stop. If we cannot come together now, when will we come together?
An update on this moment. Ukrainians fought. Eventually, the Russian vehicle surged forward into a country where it is unwanted, but still undeterred. I'm Emily Schmidt reporting.
A building owned by the Catholic Church was hit by a missile in Kyiv. The Russian rocket slammed into the upper floors of the building of the Curia of the Roman Catholic Diocese. A room in the attic was ruined, but fortunately no one was hurt. About 40 people, including women and children, were sheltering in the basement of the diocesan chancery when the bomb struck. This as the St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv is preparing for an airstrike. That's according to the Ukrainian embassy to the Holy See. The 11th century cathedral is one of the city's best known landmarks and the first place in the country to be inscribed on the World Heritage Site, along with the Kyiv Cave Monastery complex. And Ukrainians in Kyiv are volunteering to defend their city in any way they can. The people of Kyiv are mobilizing. Across the capital, volunteers are pouring in, building up the city's defenses with whatever they can. Women bring in empty bottles to be made into Molotov cocktails. The leaders of this militia say Ukraine will win this war, emboldened by recent successful operations to repel Russian forces. One shows his passport.
I am Ivanov. I am originally Russian, he says, but no Russian boots will stand here.
A billboard warns invading forces, Russian soldiers leave. How will you look your children in the eye? Ukraine has borne the brutality of this invasion with patient grit and determination. Outside every supermarket, there are long lines and scarce supplies, but no one is complaining. In fact, many are optimistic they will defeat Russia. In an eastern suburb of the city, Raisa Shmatko's front yard has turned into a staging area. She's collecting things to donate to people, like sleeping bags and food. The grandmother and retired economist now spends her days preparing for battle by making Molotov cocktails. the only weapons she has, but she says she's ready to fight.
We will beat them. They won't come, she tells us. I believe in our Ukraine. I believe in Ukrainian people.
And for more information on organizations who are trying to help the people of Ukraine, just go to thetablet.org/where-to-give-to-help-Ukraine. The situation in Ukraine will be a major part of President Biden's first State of the Union address. The military crisis, along with record inflation and spiking consumer prices, as well as the pandemic, are expected to be front and center Tuesday night. Isabel Rosales is on Capitol Hill with a preview of the president's speech.
As President Biden delivers his first State of the Union address, Russia continues to unleash the horrors of war onto Ukraine.
It's not a war. It's a genocide.
Addressing the world, President Biden is expected to remain firm. Despite the destruction, democracy will prevail.
The president has done an excellent job uniting our nation and our allies against Putin.
Even as he looks abroad, aides say the president's speech will also address the issues most affecting Americans, including record inflation and price spikes from the grocery stores to the gas pumps.
Inflation is at a 40-year high and hurting every American family. Joe Biden and House Democrats are responsible for this State of the Union in crisis.
President Biden's average approval rating stands at 41%. 54% disapprove, according to the latest CNN poll of polls.
We'll hear from an administration that has failed its own tests and which candidly has the public approval figures to match.
Inside the chamber, expect a full house, and masks will be optional. Optics that could show the country is turning the corner on the COVID pandemic. Outside, fencing and concrete blocks barricade the Capitol as police agencies prepare for protests.
Security plans for the State of the Union are robust, complex, and coordinated.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales.
Among those converging on D.C. for the State of the Union, truckers who are protesting COVID-19 mandates. Even though many of those mandates have or will be lifted, like wearing masks indoors or showing proof of vaccinations, still they're coming from as far away as Los Angeles to demonstrate in the nation's capital.
Our government can only have as much power as we give them. And that's what this is all about.
One issue they're upset about, Biden's federal vaccine mandates. Courts have blocked the ones for private companies and federal agencies, but they're still in place for healthcare workers and the military. Now to the end of mask mandates in schools. The Diocese of Brooklyn says for all of its Catholic academies and parish schools, effective this Wednesday, face coverings will be recommended but not required. It will be an individual choice for school employees and parents of all students. But students in city-funded pre-K3 and pre-K4 programs must continue to wear masks as required by the Department of Education. In a letter going out to all parents of students, the diocese says it will continue to adapt to COVID-19 mitigation strategies, but its first concern is the safety of all students, and so it will continue other health practices in classrooms, including physical distancing, hand washing, ventilation, cleaning, and disinfection. Plus, it will continue to urge students and employees to stay home when sick and to get tested. The Pfizer vaccine is less effective in kids ages 5 to 11 than adults. That's according to new data collected by health officials in New York State. The shot still prevents severe illness in kids. It just offers virtually no protection against infection. Researchers say the reason for the drop could be because kids receive only 1/3 of the dose given to adults. Pfizer is currently the only shot authorized for kids 5 to 11. The Archdiocese of New York has welcomed 2 new auxiliary bishops. Bishops Joseph Espaillat and John Benici showing their papal letters of appointment to family, friends, faithful, and fellow priests and bishops at a packed St. Patrick's Cathedral. New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan ordained the 2 men as bishops. He addressed them right before they were made shepherds.
I call you my friends. Jesus whispers to you, Bishop-elect, for a few more seconds, Bonici, Bishop-elect Espaillat, as you will now remind the church that we are all called to friendship with Jesus. No wonder this Mardi Gras is especially one of joy for us all.
After his homily, the cardinal examined the bishop candidates for their fidelity to the church and its mission. The new auxiliaries were then anointed with sacred oil and given the symbols of the office, the crozier, mitre, ring, and a book of the Gospels. Bishop Espaillat, who is now the youngest bishop in the nation, spoke to Currents News ahead of his episcopal ordination. We asked the rapper and podcast host how important technology is for evangelization.
It's critical for us to reach the masses right now. It's critical for us to reach the young people, to evangelize in new ways. The new evangelization must involve technology, must involve social media in some way, shape, or form. And it is a way for us to do it. And during the pandemic, if we're really honest, a lot of priests went online, priests who said, oh, I'll never do that. And guess what? You had to transmit the Mass online to reach God's people who could not be in churches.
Bishop Espaillat, who has worked in youth ministry for the Archdiocese of New York before, also said he plans to continue to work towards vocations for young people as a bishop. There's a lot more news headed your way. Drawing people closer to God. That's the goal of some iconic artwork at a Brooklyn church. We'll show you. Plus, as we prepare for the start of Lent, palms are in short supply. We'll tell you why. And it's a win for the pro-life movement. An abortion bill blocked in the Senate. The details coming up. It doesn't get more hands-on than this. That's artist Ayman Fayez on top of scaffolding at Resurrection Coptic Catholic Church in Park Slope. Ayman created those icons. His twin brother, Father Francis Fayez, is the pastor of the church. And since 2014, he's been making trips back and forth from Egypt, each time writing a new icon, a physical representation of the gospel. Currents News' Jessica Easthope got to see them up close and personal and has more.
There are artists that create images and leave them up to interpretation. For Ayman Fayez, there's not much room for that. The art he creates is quite literally the gospel, and his process starts long before he ever picks up a brush.
You have to read the Bible, understand the scripture, and think how this is going to be translated onto a canvas.
He's thousands of miles from home, but at Resurrection Coptic Catholic Church in Park Slope, he's among his people, a faithful Egyptian community. And most of all, he's with his brother. Father Francis Fayez, the church's pastor, and Ayman are twins. And for the last 9 years, Ayman has been making trips back and forth to the church, each time bringing or creating a new icon, making the brothers the perfect pair.
I do my homily, teaching from the gospel, sacrament, everything. I serve my church like that. And he can teach my church also from other way.
Recently, Ayman completed these panels above the altar, but Father Francis says his parish community wasn't always as enthusiastic about his brother's icons as they are now. They didn't understand that the pieces of art are depictions of the gospel and can be used in prayer and worship, just like the written word of the Bible.
The icons need open mind, and you can imagine, and you can listen.
Because the icons come straight from the gospel, you don't paint them. You write them. Ayman's been doing it since 1987. Some take up to 3 months to write, and he's written hundreds.
Icons are holy art that depict the Bible. The example I give is bread. We have the bread that we eat at meals, and then the bread of Christ that we have for the Eucharist. It is holy and has a different meaning.
And Ayman can't just use paint you buy from a store.
It is usually rocks ground up with egg yolks mixed with water. All three of these things are from God, natural.
With every brushstroke, Ayman feels he gets closer to God. And when he's in Brooklyn, he wants to bring all of his brother's parishioners with him. In Park Slope, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
So beautiful. It's a final hurrah before the Lenten season officially kicks off. People across the country indulging themselves in revelry and sweet treats as they celebrate Fat Tuesday. Music and dancing filled the streets of New Orleans as the Mardi Gras parade returned for the first time since 2020. And there's a reason why it isn't called Fit Tuesday. In Chicago, bakeries were swamped with customers looking to get their sweet fix before making the sacrifice on Ash Wednesday. And if you didn't know, Mardi Gras is also known as Shrove Tuesday. It's a day usually spent going to confession and burning palms to make the ashes for Ash Wednesday. But between the world's supply shortage and the pandemic limiting church attendance, there's actually a shortage of palms to burn. At the Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land in Washington, the friars there resorted to burning fronds from 2019 to make up for the shortage. The Diocese of Brooklyn will resume placing ashes on the foreheads of the faithful this Wednesday. The tradition was shelved last year due to COVID, with priests instructed to instead sprinkle the ashes over the person's head. The diocese says a person can still ask for that way of celebrating if they still fear contracting COVID. Also returning, the traditional practice of saying, "Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return," to each individual instead of the entire congregation. The Diocese of Brooklyn has released some guidelines in preparation for the Lenten season. All Catholics 14 and older should abstain from eating meat on Ash Wednesday and on all Fridays during Lent. Those 18 to 59 are bound to fast on those same days by limiting oneself to one full meal and light sustenance in between. And the faithful are obligated to receive Holy Communion at least once a year and are therefore encouraged to celebrate the Eucharist and penance during the Lenten season. Bishop Robert Brennan is sending you a personal message this Lenten season.
After all that we've been through these last couple of years, I want to extend to you a personal invitation. Hear the call of the Lord.
Be sure to tune in to Currents News tomorrow for Bishop Brennan's full Lenten message to the people of Brooklyn and Queens. You can also celebrate Ash Wednesday Mass with the Bishop of Brooklyn. Just tune into Net TV. We'll be airing the Mass live at noon from the Cathedral Basilica of St. James. That's Wednesday, March 2nd at noon right here on Net TV. Senate lawmakers defended the right to life Monday, striking down a bill that aimed to undo pro-life safeguards throughout the country. The Women's Health Protection Act is now effectively dead. It failed in a vote of 48 to 46, falling largely along party lines, with only one Democrat voting against it. If it had passed, the measure would have legalized abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy nationwide. But according to the New York State Catholic Conference, the bill failed thanks to the hard work of New York's faithful, saying in a statement, "We are deeply grateful to those across New York that did the work of contacting legislators to voice their opposition. The Women's Health Protection Act serves as a reminder to pro-life citizens everywhere that we must remain ever vigilant. As abortion advocates continually seek ways to expand abortion further and further, we must hold our leaders to account and ensure that dangerous proposals such as this cannot succeed." The situation in Ukraine isn't getting any better, and those trying to help have been met with interference by hackers. During a virtual press conference Tuesday, the General Secretary of Caritas Internationalis was drowned out by a stream of obscenities and noises lasting 3 minutes. Even the group chat was spammed with inappropriate messages. While the organization has not identified the individual responsible, experts have accused Russia of using hacking, cyber warfare, and disinformation in its conflict with Ukraine. While Catholic organizations are working to provide humanitarian aid, more than 500,000 refugees have already fled Ukraine. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, about half of them crossed into Poland, while others have moved to Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and Slovakia. For many, these bordering countries are just the first stop in their journey. So far, half of those who entered Romania have already left for other European countries. Solidarity for the Ukrainian people is being felt across the world. But for Taiwan, Russia's assault is hitting especially close to home. The self-governed democratic island has long faced the threat of being absorbed by China's Communist Party. So when news of Russia's invasion broke, many Taiwanese began to voice their unease about their island's own uncertain future, driving a sense of urgency to step up the island's defenses for possible attacks from China. Still to come on Currents News. They got married as air raid sirens blared in Kiev. Now they're taking up arms to defend their homeland. And we'll meet the history-making pastor who says God made her mission very clear. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. An update on a couple that proved that even in the middle of war, love finds a way. Yarina and Sviatoslav were supposed to be married in May. Instead, the two decided to exchange wedding vows during the first day of the Russian invasion. Their impromptu I do's were held inside St. Michael's Monastery as Kyiv was under attack. Right after the ceremony, the newlyweds headed to the local Territorial Defense Center to join efforts to help defend the country. The pair talk about why they made the decision to take up arms.
We love our land. We love our city. My husband was born in Lviv. It is western Ukraine. I was born here in Kiev. I have spent all my life in Kiev. I have work here. I have friends here. I have my home, my family, my beloved people here. So I didn't have any other choice, just I have to protect it.
The pair went on to say they are ready to die for their land and ask the public to please donate whatever they could to the cause. She is a trailblazer who says she is just doing what God has called her to do. Diane Koger is the first ever Black woman to pastor a Baptist church in Iowa. Kayla James introduces us to her.
On the outside, it looks like just another church building, but behind those walls is a small but mighty congregation whose leader is relentless.
I just got tired of giving up on meeting the needs of God's people.
Pastor Diane Koger, the first Black woman to pastor a Baptist church in Iowa.
I thought, me? I said, wow, trailblazing, that's going to be a road.
It's a road she started on in 2016, when Second Baptist Church Natoma began searching for a leader. Pastor Koger, who lives in Kyiv, spent that time being rotated in as a test. Once she passed with flying colors.
When they announced to me that it was a unanimous vote that they wanted me as state pastor, I was like, wow.
But making history didn't come without its hiccups. Since taking up the mantle in 2018,
amen,
Pastor Koger has seen her fair share of adversity in the form of people questioning her position.
I've had people that say to me, men in particular, wow, God is doing a new thing. And I said, no, God is doing his own thing.
And for a brief time, she wasn't without her own questions.
I was like, well, I can't come in out strong like a man. And I'm like, I'm a woman. I'm coming in as a female pastor, just doing what God has called me to do.
We thank you, Lord. But what's helped her persevere is her faith and love felt from behind the church's doors.
My Second Baptist Church family has been so embracing, which I thank God for.
Pastor Diane Koger didn't set out to make history. It's not something she even knew she could accomplish.
If I could talk to Diane as a child, I would say to her, you made it. You did it.
In the name of Jesus. And now, as the first Black woman to pastor a Baptist church in Iowa, she's out to make sure future generations know it's not too late to be a first.
What I would say to them is what I said to my granddaughter when she said, Grandma, do you think I can make history one day? And I'm a girl. And I said to her, I said, honey, you can do anything that you set your heart on.
That was Kayla James reporting. Pastor Koger says her mom was her inspiration. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.